hundreds of heavily armed, well-organized terrorists walked, rode, ran over the border with one object in mind, and that is to kill, maim, and destroy civilian life along the border.
The most consequential event in Hamas's attack on Israel is that its fighters on the ground explicitly targeted Israeli civilians for killing. Israelis driving along the street were shot. They were pulled from their homes and killed. Hamas carried out the mass killing of some 260 people at the Tribe of Nova music festival.
They were fish in a barrel, sitting in this bomb shelter. Terrorists came to the door. They were throwing grenades in, shooting machine guns.
This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered.
The moment has arrived to come to grips with the fact that for the adversaries of the free world, the killing of innocent civilians is the new normal.
That's what the Russians' war against the civilians looked like. Destroyed buildings, destroyed infrastructure. City bus just got hit by the rocket. Lives are getting lost.
Since the February 2022 invasion of Ukraine, it is estimated that about 10,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed.
We were driving down the main road from my grandmother's, and they just started shooting at us.
Russia has killed hundreds with missiles fired into residential areas of Ukrainian cities and towns. No structure is off limits.
They destroy children's hospital and make damages to other hospitals.
What few gains Mr. Putin made in eastern Ukraine were facilitated by Yevgeny Prigozhin's Wagner military group, including the atrocities against civilians in Bucha.
This is genocide.
These civilian deaths by Hamas in Israel and Russia in Ukraine are not collateral damage. They are part of a war plan, thought out by calm men sitting around a table looking at maps and targets. And while Iran's supreme leader denies his country's involvement, he praised Hamas for orchestrating the attack.
We kiss the foreheads and arms of the smart and wise planners. We are proud of them.
Between 2014 and 2016, Vladimir Putin and Hezbollah helped Syrian President Bashar al-Assad implement the siege of Aleppo in northern Syria, which also targeted civilians.
The way the Syrian government has been using these barrel bombs is by flying helicopters above rebel-held areas at very high altitude to avoid being shot down, and they simply drop them randomly on the civilian population.
On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu likened Hamas's murder to the atrocities of ISIS. Islamic State perfected the targeting of innocent civilians during the Iraq War, and before that, it was the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Our allies are ready to join us if Gaza is subjected to a war of annihilation. They will not sit with their hands tied. The government of Israel knows this.
Hamas and Hezbollah, whatever their original ideological underpinnings, are now essentially Iran's Wagner-like mercenaries. Killing Israelis is what they do for money.
This kind of savagery, this kind of inhumanity must be stopped.
Women brutally raped and murdered. They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
Until now, there are or were internationally agreed to rules, most prominently the Geneva Conventions, against the acts described herewith. But so what? Add it all up, and it looks like crimes against humanity are becoming normalized.
Ukraine is the first line of defense for us. And the problem that Vivek doesn't understand is he wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. He wants to let China eat Taiwan. He wants to go and stop funding Israel. Putin has said once Russia takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. That's a world war. We're trying to prevent war.
The standard argument against more funding for Ukraine is that there is no plan. Israel has a plan: defeat Hamas. So how about this plan for Ukraine? Defeat Russia.
Let's end the war as soon as possible by driving the Russians out of Ukraine and liberating all the territory. Define that as an objective, and then talk to the American people periodically on why this is still important to us.
Another question for the wing of the Republican Party that wants to be done with the world is how many Americans would they leave on the other side? Hamas is holding more than 100 Israelis hostage, including an uncounted number of Americans. Hamas's paymaster and planner, Iran, just exchanged 5 American hostages for $6 billion.
The incentive system is now put in place, not just for the Iranians, but for the North Koreans, for every bad actor that says, take an American, you'll get $1 billion.
Our adversaries, Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea, will continue the mass killing of civilians and hostage-taking as a strategic policy until the United States decisively counters this awful new normal. That means funding a credible U.S. deterrent capacity and ensuring that the Israelis and Ukrainians have the means to show how to defeat these enemies. The alternative will be another 9/11-like lapse into complacency, and the cost of that, obviously, is too high.